Hi everyone, Megan here. I thought it was about time that I do another video in my All Things Anne series. Now I want to make this like a regular thing, so I'm hoping to have an All Things Anne video come out each month at least. So, of course, when I say All Things Anne, I'm referring to Anne of Green Gables. I have grown up on the series, the books, the movies, everything. I've played Anne Shirley on stage, as you will see in the thumbnail, hopefully, of this video. I've also played her daughter, Rilla, in a stage version. So I love this series. These are all Ella Montgomery books behind me. I'm a big fan of Ella Montgomery. So today I wanted to talk about a few of my favorite Anne anecdotes in the series. So these are little stories centered around Anne, mishaps, things that happened to her that I particularly love in the series. So there won't be any spoilers in this unless there's I'll keep this spoiler free. There'll be spoilers for some of these mishaps that I'm going to be talking about, but I'm not going to say any major spoilers for this series. So the first one I want to talk about is one that if you haven't read the books, then you won't know about this because it isn't in any of the movie versions, but it is one of the most funny scenes. It's hilarious. So Anne has a good friend named Jane Andrews, and Jane Andrews is in a lot of the film adaptations. But one night, I think Jane Andrews is staying over at her place, or she's staying over at Jane Andrews' place. I can't quite remember. I think Jane is staying at her place. And, you know, they're good friends. They've been good school friends for a long time. They know each other very well. And Anne is just about to fall asleep. She's in that perfectly comfortable, warm place where you're like so, like in heaven, you're about to fall asleep. And they're in the same bed because, you know, they didn't have a spare room or whatever. So Jane is just staying in Anne's room with her. And Anne is just about to fall asleep. And Jane goes, "Anne, can I talk to you about something?" And Anne's like, "Okay, gotta wake up. Gotta, you know, be open to this. Okay, yeah, sure, Jane, what?" And she's like, "So you remember my brother Billy?" And she's like, "Yeah, what about Billy?" Like, it says something like, you know, of course she remembered Billy, but she never thought about him. So Jane asks, "What do you think of my brother Billy?" And Anne is thinking, she never thinks about Billy at all. Like, how is she supposed to respond to that? So she, you know, makes some kind of excuse, says something, and then Jane says, "So Billy, you know, he's got a good farm and he's making some good money, and he's gonna take over the farm. He's gonna have the place, like he has the homestead. So what would you think about marrying him?" And Anne is like, "Oh my goodness, what? What?" She's never even thought of him in this way. And she realizes Jane is, like, Billy Andrews is proposing through Jane. So she's like, "I get my first proposal by proxy. This is supposed to be the most romantic thing ever, but it's not at all." So it's really hilarious because it's one of those moments where Anne has this, like, wonderful idea of what love is, and then it just comes crashing down. And of course, you know, she tries to turn down Billy to Jane in a very kind way, but, you know, Jane's a little bit offended, of course, and then Anne cannot fall asleep at all. She does not sleep the rest of that night. Jane rolls over, immediately falls asleep. So it's a really funny anecdote. Okay, another one, which is classic, it is hilarious, is when Anne's red hair just drives her crazy. It is just like the thing that she is the most sensitive about. She feels so ugly with this red hair. Back then, red hair was often the sign of, people would think that you were a witch if you had red hair. Like, it was the worst thing to have red hair in that time. And you can't really tell in this light, but my hair is actually red. It's just, it looks, I don't know what it looks like in this light, but so I'm very thankful that I didn't live in that time and have to deal with that like Anne did. But anyways, so what happens is that she just needs to get rid of this red hair. She feels so ugly, and she meets this peddler on the road, and he says that it'll turn it into a beautiful raven black, and it doesn't, because it's like cheap dye. It turns her hair green instead, and she has to get it all cut off, and she just feels so ugly, even worse than before. She said, and I just love what Marilla says to her. She says, if I was going to dye it, I would have picked a nicer color. I wouldn't have picked green. And of course Anna's like, "I didn't mean for it to turn green." Yeah, and it's funny, when you get, like, if you swim a lot in a pool, the chlorine will turn your red hair green. It gives that green tinge to it. And so it's like, better stick to swimming in the lake or the river or the ocean. Although swimming in pools is fun too. That's asides the point though, besides the point. Let's go to our next anecdote, the next one that I absolutely love. And that is the Lily Maid scene. I love this scene. Oh, it's so good. And this scene is not often in stage adaptations, but it was in the stage adaptation that I was in. We actually had a boat like on wheels. So we had the boat like floating along and oh, it was so great. I love this scene so much. Anne and her friends are playing, what's her name? I'm blanking on her name right now. So there's Lancelot, Guinevere, Arthur, and I don't know why I'm blanking out on her name. The Lily Maid. I'm just blanking on her name right now. So it's so wonderful because Anne's like, oh, I can't play the Lily Maid. A red-haired person can't play the Lily Maid. But they're all like, no, no, you do it. You'll be good at it. So she gets in and she is, you know, pretending to be dead in the boat, reenacting this scene from the legends of King Arthur. And she's just like glorying in the romance of it all. It's just wonderful. And all of a sudden, whoa, I'm soaking wet. What's going on? She sits up. The boat is sinking and she can't really swim. But thank goodness the boat is floating by some of the pilings that hold the bridge up. And so she climbs out onto the piling and she's praying and praying that someone will help her and save her. Meanwhile, her friends see that the boat has sunk and they're screaming and crying and freaking out and running off for help. They just leave her behind to run off for help. And who should happen along but Gilbert Blythe in his rowboat. And so he comes by and he saves her. And it's in that moment that Anne has a choice. She realizes that she has forgiven Gilbert. She's over that. She's forgiven him. But she has to make a choice. Will she tell Gilbert that she has forgiven him, or will she keep that to herself? And unfortunately, the pride gets in the way and she decides not to tell him that she's forgiven him. And so they have years more of not speaking to each other. So let this be a lesson to everyone. Don't let pride, build up walls in your relationships. It's not a good idea. Okay, my number one favorite scene in the whole Anne of Green Gables series, which I feel like is probably everyone else's favorite too, and which is in the thumbnail of this video if all went well, is the slate breaking scene. It is classic. Like, it is so good. Gilbert, they're in school. Gilbert has just met Anne, and the first thing he does to interact with her, he's trying to get her attention because he's interested, and he does the worst thing possible, which is he pulls one of her braids and calls her Carrots. And of course she jumps up and is furious and says, "How dare you, you mean, hateful boy!" And she slams her slate down over his head and it breaks. And it's hugely shocking and it affects the whole course of the series and it's wonderful. So I thought I would show you. I kept one of the props from the Anne of Green Gables version that I was in, and I just wrote on it Anne of Green Gables 2017. So if you look at the back, it's made of foam, and beforehand one of the stage managers or assistant stage managers cut this jagged line but only halfway through the foam so that it still would be strong and held together. So then what I did is I held it in my hands so that this side, the part where half the foam had broken through, I held it towards myself, and then when I went and I slammed it over Gilbert's head, it went, like I was holding it like this and I went slam, and it breaks over his head, and it's only made of foam, but because there was like half of the foam that wasn't broken, the sound of that foam breaking over his head sounded like an actual slate breaking over his head. So it was so great because I made it look like I was really putting it down on Gilbert's head, and then the guy who was playing Gilbert completely reacted, like fell to the ground. And then so whenever that happened, the whole audience just like like everyone just gasped. And so it was like one of my favorite moments to do, and like one of my favorite moments of every single adaptation, one of my favorite moments to read. Like, it is just the best moment in the whole Anne of Green Gables series. So yeah, that's all about I have to say. That's about all I have to say for now. But I'm excited to be making some more of these All Things Anne videos. Tell me, what are some of your favorite scenes from Anne of Green Gables? I'd love to hear about that. So yeah, let's chat in the comments below. And yeah, I'll see you next time. May you all be filled with peace, hope, love, and joy. So take care, everyone. Bye.